Can I tell you a story? Take a minute to get comfortable, very comfortable. Cups of tea, blankets, pillow forts, the works. And while you're getting yourself organised for story time, I will tell you that this podcast and all of these stories are supported by patrons who are excellent people like yourself. So if these stories feed you and you would like to offer something back and become a patron too, then you can do that on patreon.com/can I tell you a story. And you will receive my endless thanks and bonus stories and other things which you can read about on the site patreon.com/can I tell you a story. And now, let's begin the story. Fiona sits with her legs drawn up underneath her on the small section of her couch that isn't cluttered with unread books and sketchbooks and pencils, hunched into herself. Sunday morning is an invitation she doesn't remember accepting. She feels absent from the day, absent from the world. The only way she knows she exists is by the feeling of warmth seeping from the coffee mug she's cradling in both hands. In turn, the room cradles Fiona. It's a room that's easy to breathe in. It's full of colour, walls of art and magic, treasures that hold meaning and stories. It's a room filled with life, with heart, with everything Fiona feels herself to be missing on the inside. Without warning, the room swings from contained to claustrophobic, like she doesn't have enough presence of her own to stop the walls from collapsing in on her. Fiona puts her coffee mug in the sink and pulls on a coat. Outside, her breath turns to steam as she turns her key in the lock and drops it into her pocket. She drifts the city streets, half looking for new places to hide unexpected art, walls that would welcome it until the weather wore them clean again. Fiona doesn't look into the faces of the people she passes, she looks at the ground as she makes way for them. She's a ghost, haunting the streets of her city, haunting her own life. She finds the letterbox by accident, following a man in a grey coat with dark red lining that flashes when he turns down the lane. She's not following him with any real intention. She's drawn along in his wake because he looks like he knows something she doesn't. Fiona pretends to check her phone when he stops partway down the lane. He looks like he's done this before as he slides a plain white envelope from his coat pocket and pushes it through the metal flap set into the wall. He pauses a moment, takes a breath and holds it before releasing it with a quiet sigh, like the posting of a letter is some kind of holy rite. He pushes his hands into his pockets and continues along the lane. Fiona puts her phone away and looks more closely at the wall. There's a metal letterbox set into the bricks with a flap to keep out the weather. It has a dent in it, like someone threw something heavy at it once. There's a sign, white writing on black. The complaints department. Underneath are some rules. No complaining about complaint resolution, 30-day time frame for resolution, blah blah. Fiona tunes out. Who reads terms and conditions? Fiona has never read any in her life. If she'd read the terms and conditions for life, perhaps she wouldn't have found herself in this mess. Feeling like she's fading, feeling like she barely exists. She reads the sign again. Complaints department. Where would she even begin? It's wrong. It's all wrong. She's all wrong. Existence is just one dreary, long complaint. Fiona didn't want this kind of life. Wasn't life supposed to feel alive? Friendships, relationships, going out for coffee, working, not working, the world. It's all the same. The feeling of absence. The world is a movie she's watching in the background while she's doing something else, except she isn't doing anything else. She thinks of the man ahead of her, who had obviously done this before. Something about this must work for him, or he wouldn't come back and put another envelope in the letterbox. Perhaps it could work for her. She pulls her tiny notebook from her pocket and scribbles a few lines. I don't feel like I exist. Or perhaps the world doesn't exist. It's wrong. All of it is wrong, and I don't even know how to fix it. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She tears the page from the book, feeling a little sad. Notebooks have feelings too, and she doesn't like to take pages away from their friends. She pushes it through the letterbox, lets the flap fall closed. She sighs as she walks away, experiencing none of the holy moment of the man before. Nothing else has worked, so why would this? It hurts too much to hope. Feeling close to tears, Fiona walks home. Silas is sitting in the dark in the middle of the complaints department office on Simone's swivel chair, spinning quietly. There's something soothing in the movement, round and round, round and round. It helps him think, although if anyone else had been there and asked him, he would have said he wasn't thinking about anything much, just spinning in circles, seeing what it felt like for some of the folks who pushed complaints in through the letterbox. No one else is in yet. It's very early. He's not sure why he's in either, except something woke him and he didn't feel like being in his house any longer. So he got up, walked through the silent city as the sun was just beginning to think about rising. Silas likes those quiet hours. They feel private, intimate. He feels the city's heart beating in his own chest when he walks through the early morning streets. There's a faint pop, and a complaint materializes out of the air and drifts down towards the pile on the floor next to Ewan's desk. Ewan is the junior manager, and he's given up trying to keep the pile on his desk, neat or in any kind of order. The complaints have minds of their own and tend to collapse in regular sliding avalanches. Ewan has decided to trust the ineffable wisdom of the collective of complaints, and thus far it seems to be working. At least, no one has complained. Silas reaches out an arm and is gratified when his spin intersects the trajectory of this new complaint. He catches it out of the air, his momentum gradually slowing as he reads. You don't feel like you exist. Silas opens his hand and the page disappears like a magic trick. Like that? Silas spins around again. Nothing up my sleeve, he says to the empty room. He smiles, wondering what it means to be smiling in the dark with no one there to see him. Is he still smiling? He supposes he is, since he's there to feel it. He wheels Simone's chair across the office to his own desk and opens the drawer. He deliberates for a moment, trying to feel the nature of the complaint, trying to feel the person who feels they don't exist, trying to feel the need beneath the pain. He takes a velvet pouch from the drawer and pockets it, scribbles a note and leaves it on Simone's chair in the middle of the room. The chair is still spinning as the door shuts behind him. The day is different now. It belongs to everyone, not just to him alone. Some of the people he passes are awake enough to notice him, a tall man with silver hair dressed in black, walking with purpose and a cultivated air of mystery. He looks like he belongs in a world of magic, and so when people see him, they believe the world is magic, until the moment passes, leaving them feeling bereft in a way they can't place. Coming towards him is a woman who isn't looking at the people she's passing. She's focusing on walls where they join the pavement, on the bones of the city, and she looks like she's trying not to see people at all. Silas stands where she'll have to look up or collide with him. She doesn't look up. "Oh," she says. I'm sorry." Her voice sounds like she's not very used to talking, confused by the moment, like she was expecting to be able to walk right through him. "It's okay," says Silas. "Here," he says, holding out something in his hand. It's a piece of glass. Fiona takes it, automatic acceptance, and then looks at him with a frown, trying to understand. What kind of stranger hands another stranger a piece of glass? "It's a prism," says Silas. "It's for you." Fiona doesn't want to accept it, but politeness says she can't refuse. Her hand wavers. Should she put it in her pocket, keep holding it like a talisman? A talisman for what? "It's okay," says Silas again. If you don't find it useful, you can leave it somewhere for someone else to find. Being given a choice makes her feel better about accepting the gift. She puts it in her pocket to deal with later, when the giver isn't right there in front of her. "Thank you," she says, frown still creasing her forehead. "You're welcome," says Silas, and disappears into the swelling crowd. Fiona keeps her hand around the prism in her pocket, the angles of it hard against the curl of her fingers, a kind of anchor to something that's real in the strangeness of the morning. Later, she takes it out and looks at it. It looks like nothing, until she holds it to the sunlight, making rainbows dance across the ground. Why does a stranger give another stranger something like this? What does it mean? It's a puzzle she can't solve. She thinks about leaving the prism somewhere for someone else to find, but it feels important now, this puzzle piece. And she finds she wants to keep it until she knows what it's for. Ewan looks up as Silas materializes at the door of the complaints department. "Where have you been? You didn't get my note?" The chair is gone from the middle of the floor, returned to Simone's desk. No Simone, though. Silas vaguely remembers something about visiting her sister. "Got it, but didn't get it. It was a question mark. There was an early morning complaint. I took it upon myself to help her. Well, both of those things. Confusion will be helpful. It means she's seeing things differently." Ewan rolls his eyes. "Of course you did. Where's the complaint? I need to enter it in the ledger." Silas opens his fingers. His hand is empty. "It disappeared," he says, flourishing his empty palm. "Just like that. She feels like either the world doesn't exist or she doesn't exist, and if she doesn't exist, how can her complaint exist? Or if the world is disappearing, her complaint can't be in the world because there's no such thing. Thus, the complaint is gone." Ewan groans and rests his forehead on the desk. With a soft thud. "Silas, have mercy, please. It's too early. I'm going to get a coffee. You don't deserve one, but I will bring you one anyway if you want anything, and then you can fill out the ledger while I'm gone." Silas grins. "Thanks, Ewan. The usual. And one for Sadie. I have a feeling she's on her way." Ewan looks towards the door, failing to hide a flush of pleasure, irritation, forgotten. The sun is out. The day is cold, high wisps of cloud white against the icy blue. Fiona walks with the prism in her pocket, trying to make sense of it. It feels solid in her hand, but when she looks at it without sunlight, it's barely there. Oh, just like her. Barely there. Fiona looks up and there he is, the man who gave her the prism. Same dark coat, same feeling of being from somewhere else, a different kind of world. More solid than this place. He has his back to her, walking up the steps and into the cathedral. On a whim, she follows. "Hello again," says the man, not turning. He's looking up at the rose windows, the light streaming through them and colouring the walls, the wooden pews, the floors. "It's amazing, isn't it?" he says, "how light transforms everything, creates beauty through transparency. And not just that. Have you ever been out and about early on a foggy morning? Light is what makes fog beautiful too." Fiona feels like she should understand, but she doesn't. She knows the words, but she can't grasp the meaning. "Is any of it real?" She asks the question, spinning with vertigo. The height of the cathedral ceiling is drawing her up at the same time as she's falling through the floor. "Does it matter?" says the man. He seems genuinely curious. "Here, sit down." Fiona sits and looks at the floor, her head buzzing. "You're an artist," says the man. Fiona looks up and then back down again, still dizzy. "Yes," she says. "How did you—" "I'm Silas," says Silas. "I work for the complaints department." "Oh." Fiona feels her face heat as comprehension dawns. It's wrong, all wrong, but she should be making the best of it, shouldn't complain. There's still beauty. Just look at this building. I'm sorry, she says. I shouldn't complain. I mean... Silas is looking up at the windows. It's okay, he says. You're allowed. Fiona pulls the prism from her pocket and looks at it, transparent in her fingers. Here, but not here. Silas looks at her like he sees her, like he's certain she's really there. The dizziness abates a little. Feel like a walk, he says. Fiona doesn't know if she feels like anything, and she doesn't know how to tell, so she stands when Silas does and follows him out of the cathedral. Always following, she thinks. If I wasn't following, I'd be standing still forever, petrified in place like a tree in a bog. Silas turns down a street that's mostly the backs of buildings, walks past a gate that looks like it's been closed forever, iron hinges, bleeding rust down the bricks. Ahead is a woman, patiently waiting for a child who might be 7 or so. The child is looking at something, intent, face close to the wall. They're transfixed. Look, says Silas. Fiona looks. These people are strangers. She's never seen them before. Slowly it dawns on her what the kid is looking at. It's an artwork she created, carefully cut out of paper and pasted onto the bricks. An image of a child about the same height and age as the one who's staring. The child on the bricks is pushing open a doorway into another world, and through the crack there is light. Cause and effect, says Silas. You caused that. The light shone through you. You made that moment of wonder. For that kid, and for anyone else who takes the time to stop and really see. Fiona looks at the child on the wall. It's the world as she wishes it was. A doorway to a brighter place waiting, if you just knew where to look. But the world isn't like that. Maybe it is, says Silas to her silent protest. You're the prism, and it worries you, this feeling that you barely exist, that you're transparent. But that's what lets the light shine through you. Life flows through you, and in the process, you make its beauty visible. Fiona clutches the glass in her pocket. The prism is already perfect. The coloured windows in the cathedral are made to be beautiful. She's nothing. She's just someone who likes to draw doorways to where she'd rather be. In your complaint, you said you feel like you're not real, says Silas. Either you're not or the world isn't. And if the world's not real, then you can't be real either. But you keep creating beauty, and that's a kind of hope. Because there's a part of you that wants to be real, that wants the world to exist. It's like a paradox that you're living, wanting to exist and disappear at the same time. And you live in the tension of those opposing forces. And it's okay. It's okay that you do. Fiona feels wrung out. She wants to disappear, just like Silas said. And it's true too, that she wants to be seen and known. And so she draws on walls. She looks at the image of the child and the door, the light spilling through. You look through your own hands and you see the world, says Silas. The world needs you to see it. The world needs you to make it real. Blind leading the blind, she can't stop herself from saying. Silas grins. His eyes look at her as though she exists. She watches as he fishes in his pocket and pulls out a matching prism, quirks an eyebrow. How many of those do you have in there? Just this one, now, he says. Twin to yours. Maybe it helps to know that. Fiona frowns and finds that it does help. It helps to know that somewhere in the world there's a man with a prism that's the same as her prism, who knows things about light and beauty, and who looks at her like she's real. Keep letting life flow through you, Fiona, he says. Follow the things that are beautiful. They'll take you somewhere. Following again. Always following. But following beauty, that has a rightness to it. Fiona nods, trying to remember if she'd ever told him her name. After Silas has gone, Fiona sits in a patch of sunlight with the prism in her hands, throwing rainbows on the ground. Beauty through transparency. Invisible, and yet the beauty that comes through them is enough to bring you to tears. She doesn't know what to make of this. Something is different, and she might need a minute to figure out what. She reaches for her little notebook, no longer sad about the missing page. Fiona starts to draw rainbows, confused, but thinking different thoughts. Silas pauses for a moment before pushing open the door to the complaints department office. He hears no sound, but there's a quiet feeling of contentment coming from the room. Sadie is sitting in Simone's chair in the middle of the room, gently spinning in circles as she sips her coffee. "How'd it go?" says Ewan, looking up from the ledger where he's entering the new complaints before allocating them to one of the field officers to be resolved. "I was benevolently confusing," says Silas, as he takes the twin of Fiona's prism from his pocket and shines a rainbow onto Ewan's face. "If she keeps following beauty, I think she'll be okay." Thanks for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this story, and if you did, and you'd like more stories, perhaps you would like to become a patron. Patrons receive bonus stories, and there are lots there waiting for you already. You can find out more about that and sign up on patreon.com/Can I Tell You a Story. Until next time, keep following beauty.